Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. So yesterday we stopped where Hiranyakashipu was just starting to preach to his family members. So we are at text 20. Just put the notification. Started. Shri Hiranyakashipuruvacha Amba he vadhuputra Viram marhata shochitum Ripur abhimuke slaghya Suranam vada ipsitaha. Hiranyakashipu said, "My dear mother, sister-in-law and nephews, you should not lament for the death of the great hero, for a hero's death in front of his great enemy is glorious and desirable."
His enemy.
Yeah. I said,
Anyway.
I just want to comment that this kind of tendency when somebody is so full of themselves and very narcissistic type, they tend to think that everything they do is heroic, everything is great about them, and everything the other person is like less. This is encouraging. Bhutanam iha samvasa prapayam iva survate prapayam iva suvrate Daive naikatra nitanam unnitanam swakarmabhi. My dear mother, in a restaurant, a place for drinking cold water, many travelers are brought together, and after drinking the water, they continue to their respective destinations. Similarly, living entities join together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destination. There's a Purandaradasa song. It says, "Hagge angaladalli bandu kutante, ಆ ಕ್ಷಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾರಿ ಹೋದಂತೆ ಹಂಗೆ ಪರೆದಿತ್ತೋ ಪ್ರಾಚೀನದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಂಗೆ ಇರಬೇಕು ಸಂಸಾರದಲ್ಲಿ." Then it says about the also like a bird who comes and sits in a courtyard and then flies away, and then like people go to a marketplace and then they disperse, and the different analogies like that. We should also be detached. Purport. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. All living entities are act exactly according to the directions of Prakriti, material nature. Because in the material world, we are fully under a higher control. All the living entities in this material world would have come here only because they wanted to be equal to Krishna in enjoyment, and have thus been sent here to be conditioned by material nature in different degrees. In the material world, the so-called family is a combination of several persons in one home to fulfill the terms of their imprisonment. Oh my God. As criminal prisoners scatter as soon as their terms are over, they are released. All of us who have temporarily assembled as family members will continue to our respective destinations. Another example given is that family members are like straws carried together by the waves of a river. Sometimes such straws mix together in whirlpools and later dispersed again by the same waves. They float alone on water. Although Hiranyakashipu was a demon, he had Vedic knowledge and understanding. Thus, the advice given to his family members, his sister-in-law, mother, and nephews was quite sound. The demons are considered highly elevated in knowledge, but because they do not use their good intelligence for the service of the Lord, they are called demons. The demigods, however, act very intelligently to satisfy Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-13. अथा पुंभिर्द्विजा श्रेष्ठा वर्णाश्रम विभागशा स्वनिष्ठितस्य धर्मस्य संसिद्धिर्हरितोषणम्. O best among the twice one, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging his prescribed duties, dharma, according to caste divisions and orders of life, is to please Lord Hari. Is to please the Lord Hari.
The Lord Hari.
Please the Lord Hari. To become a demigod or become godly, whatever one's occupation, one must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nitya Atmavaya Shuddha Sarvagha Sarvavitpara Dhatte Swa Atmanu Lingam Mayaya Visrujan Gunan.
One thing I want to say about the previous verse is that, see, because Vedic culture is ultimately based on Jnana and Vairagya, there are so many analogies that prepare the person for detachment. Hiranyakashipu says, like, there is a place for water, people come, they take what they need, and they disperse. Sri Prabhupada says, like, there are things floating in the water, they come together because of the waves, but then they get the same waves sending around, or criminals in the jail, they're all together, packed in a building, but then when their term is over, they just scatter. So it's interesting how, because this culture is based on detachment, is based on knowledge that all relations are temporary, there are so many ways of explaining that. Other cultures are more into developing a strong attachment for a place, for a family, for a dynasty, but identifying with the body, identify with the country, identify with a certain lineage, and definitely that's based on ignorance. They don't understand that the soul has nothing to do with those type of connections.
Nitya Atmavaya Shuddha Sarvagha Sarvavitpara Dhatte Swa Atmanu Lingam Mayaya Visrujan Gunan. The spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body. But because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy, and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. Purport. Hiranyakashipu very intelligently described the position of the soul. The soul is never the body, but is always completely different from the body. Being eternal and inexhaustible, the soul has no death. But when the same pure soul desires to enjoy the material world independently, he is placed under the conditions of material nature and must therefore accept a certain type of body and suffer the pains and pleasures thereof. This is also described by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 13:22. Karanam guna sangasya, karanam guna sangosya. Sorry, can I can't read it. Karanam guna sango syasad asadyoni janmasu. Living entity is born in different families or species of life because of being infected by the by the modes of material nature. When conditioned by material nature, the living entity must accept a certain type of body, which is offered by nature under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishrati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities. We're seated as on a machine made of material energy. Bhagavad Gita 8:61, the body is just like a machine, and according to the living entity's karma, he's offered a particular type of machine to move here and there under the control of material nature. This continues until he surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mameva ye prapadyante mayami tam tarantite. Until he surrenders, the conditioned soul is carried from life to life by the arrangement of material nature. Any comments?
This is basic philosophy. We are not the body. And certainly we need to remember that Krishna says in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin yata dehi kumaram yavanam jara tata dehim tarapati dhiras tatra manmuhyati. The dhira, sober sage, is not disturbed by the changing of the body. So it should always be.
How do you apply that? How do you apply that philosophical thing in everyday life? We have so many duties that we need to perform with this body, and sometimes we do get identified.
The point is that this should be the default setting of our consciousness, that we are here temporarily, and we need to remember that. Of course, we have many duties and many obligations, but the primary duty and obligation is to remember the philosophy. Otherwise, we become so absorbed in the temporary and we become so agitated and identified. So yes, I mean, even Arjuna didn't stop fighting, didn't stop Kshatriya duties, but obviously those should be illuminated by the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, we just we take Krishna consciousness just as a religion. Okay, I believe in Krishna, but then where are the teachings of Krishna, the basic teachings of Krishna?
Yeah, philosophy is important. We shouldn't just be sentimental also, right? Yathambasha prashalata taravu pichalaiva chakshusha brahmyamanena drishyate chalativa bhu. Because of the movements of the water, the trees on the bank of a river, when reflected on water, seem to move. Similarly, when the eyes move because of some mental derangement, the land appears to move also. Purport. Sometimes, because of mental derangement, the land appears to be moving. A drunkard, for example, or a person with heart disease sometimes feels that the land is moving. Similarly, the reflections of tree in flowing water also appears to move. These are the actions of Maya. Actually, the living entity does not move. Sthanur achaloyam. The living entity does not take birth or accept death, but because of the transient, subtle, and gross bodies, the living entity appears to move from one place to another or be dead and gone forever. As a great Bengali Vaishnava poet, Jagadananda Pandita has said, Pishachi paile ye namati channahaya, maya grasta jivera hai seva bhava udaya. According to this statement, from the Prema Vivarta, when a living entity is conditioned by material nature, he is exactly like a person haunted by a ghost. One should therefore understand the fixed position of the spirit soul and how he is carried by the waves of material nature to different bodies and different situations under lamentation and hankering. One achieves the success of life when he understands the constitutional position of his self and is undisturbed by the conditions created by material nature. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. So what was the point? The point is here, although it may, like, this is the whole point of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Atra vastu shivadam tapatrayonmulanam. Like Srimad Bhagavatam helps us to distinguish reality from illusion. If I identify myself as a body, then I could be identifying, I could be doing a wrong identification. And understand the fixed position. I want to understand what this means. One should understand, therefore, the fixed position. I didn't understand that analogy. How he's carried away by the waves of material nature to different bodies and situations.
Well, this is the beginning of the analogy. The end of the analogy is in the next verse. But the point is that the sense of impermanence is a form of illusion.
Sense of impermanence is also illusion. Or sense of permanence is illusion.
No, both, in the sense if somebody thinks that everything is permanent, this material world is an illusion, but also the sense that the soul, the self, it undergoes a change, that's also an illusion. Here it says there are two analogies that is
okay.
One is that the trees are fixed, but because they reflect the water, they seems to be moving, but that's obviously an illusion. So similarly, when there are mental disturbances, like somebody is drunk or they got chakra, now they got spinning. So the world looks spinning, but is actually not spinning. So yatha, this is the beginning of the analogy. Next verse completes the analogy.
Oh, okay. But Prabhupada is kind of expanding on that analogy, basically. Or is he giving another analogy here? Like haunted by the ghost?
See, actually, the living entity does not move. Sthanur achalo yam. Okay? So, but because here the transient, subtle, and gross bodies, a living entity appears to move from place to another or be dead and gone forever. It looks like things that happen to the self, but they are not happening to the self.
So when something is happening in my life, it's not happening to me.
It depends how you experience it. It may affect you, but it depends how you experience it.
So nothing is happening to the soul. What is like? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. But
That's a soul. When you talk feelings, only the soul, because only the soul can perceive anything. But sometimes that perception is due to identifying with things which are transient. So therefore, what Srila Prabhupada gives is the analogy by Jagadananda Pandit that says the one who is a condition is like somebody haunted by a ghost. So when somebody haunted by a ghost is not really acting himself, but is possessed by this ghost. So like that.
So the ghost equals to our speculations and illusions.
It's an external entity that forces us to think in a certain way. So when we identify with matter, we identify with the changing waves of matter.
Okay.
But again, next verse completes the analogy.
If anybody has any questions, you can unmute or raise your hand, or you can type it in the chat box. Evam gunai brahmyamane manasyavi kalapuman yati yat samyatam badre hyalingo lingavan ivan. In the same way, O my gentle mother, when the mind is agitated by the moments of the modes of material nature, the living entity, although free from all the different phases of subtle and gross bodies, thinks that he has changed from one condition to another. Purport. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:84-13, Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridha duke swadhik kala tradishu bhaumad iyadiha. ईज्जदिहा यत्तीर्थबुद्धि शलीलेन करहि
She,
चीज जनेश विघ्नेषु स एव गोखरः. A human being who identifies the body made of three elements of self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of his birth worshipable, and who goes to a place of pilgrimage simply to bathe rather than to meet men of transcendental knowledge, there is to be considered like a cow or an ass. Although Hiranyakashipu was a great demon, he was not as foolish as the population of the modern world. Hiranyakashipu had clear knowledge of the spirit, soul, and subtle gross bodies. But now we are so degraded that everyone, including the exalted scientists, philosophers, and other leaders, is under the bodily conception of life, which is condemned in the Shastra. Sa eva gokhara. Such persons are nothing but cows and asses. What is
there's more.
who considers the land of his birth worshipable, and who goes to a place of pilgrimage simply to bathe rather than to meet transcendental. What is this part here? Means if I consider, oh, I'm Indian and feel good about it.
Yeah, of course, any land. People generally glorify the land of the birth. But on the body, I mean, the land might have some glory, like India has got some glory because the avatars come here. But if one just out of the bodily thinking that, oh, I am, because this is the land of my body, that must be the best land of the world. And of course, it's not better than a cow and an ass. Nationalism, you know. What does it mean, India? It's just lines on the map. What's that? India before was including Pakistan, was including Bangladesh, was including other places. So to think that, oh, because this is the land of my birth and I am the body, and therefore this land is supreme, or I'm ready to die for this land, that's just animalism.
But this can be also extended to like devotees. Sometimes we say, oh, this is my guru, he's very great. But then if we're not actually imbibing the principles of teachings and we're just proud about my Guru Maharaj is great, that's also similar, right?
There are some similarities.
Hiranyakashipu advised his family members that although the gross body of his brother Hiranyaksha was dead, and they were aggrieved because of this, he should not lament for the great soul of Hiranyaksha, who had already attained his next destination. So according to Hiranyakashipu, what is the next destination of Hiranyaksha?
It doesn't say.
But he believes in reincarnation.
Of course, the whole thing is about the soul not dying at the time of death.
Atma, the spirit soul, is always unchanged. Avikalaha Puman, we're spirit souls, but when carried away by mental activities, manodharma, we suffer from so-called material conditions of life. Wow, that's so powerful. This generally happens to non-devotees. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahat guna. Non-devotees may possess exalted material qualities, but because they are foolish, they have no good qualification. The designations of the conditioned soul in the material world are decorations of the dead body. The conditioned soul has no information of the spirit and its exalted existence beyond the effects of material condition. This is so important. Like many zeros, right? Material qualities. Even if a person has a lot of material qualities, if he's not a devotee, then why is not valuable?
It's not valuable in themselves. It's valuable if you have Krishna. Obviously, if you have many zeros and you had Krishna, it's more valuable than just have a couple of zeros and you had Krishna. That's why Srila Prabhupada said, enter the college, you need intelligent leaders. So by themselves, this material quality, they have no spiritual value, although it may be, of course, a source of, the consequences of pious acts. But by themselves, It's like Hiranyakashipu has so much material qualities and power and influence, but obviously as a demon is only creating disturbances. So similarly, somebody has only material qualities and is just a materialist, we saw they're like cows and asses. So maybe a great cow, a great ass, but still they're animals. So similarly, if somebody so many material qualities, because material quality is a dream. So it's like you say, okay, I have a big, perfect dream. So what? What's the value? What stays? Nothing. I dreamed that I was a king of the world, and everybody was serving me. So what? Then you get up and you have to go to your job. So similarly, the soul passes through different stages of life. Sometimes as a dog, sometimes as a god, a demigod, and one should think of these conditions as the self. But certainly, obviously, if you make a dog devotee, or if you make a demigod devotee, that has a different influence on the movement. Demigod or a very exalted person can do so much, and a dog can do only so much.
So, like for example, there are like the whole trend is people are so much into celebrities, singers, actors. People are so crazy for them. Millions and millions of people follow, and they have millions of views on these kind of videos, and like material mundane singers, mundane actors. They are like so popular. So they are like they may have qualities and skills, right? But they're not using it for Krishna. But we can see them as potential people for preaching.
Yes.
Isham atma viparyaso ह्यालिङ्गलिङ्ग भावना एषा प्रिया प्रिया योगो वियोगा कर्म संश्रिता संभवश्च विनाशश्च शोकश्च विविधा स्मृता अविवेकश्च चिन्ता च विवेका स्मृतिरेव च. In his bewildered state, the living entity, accepting the body and the mind to be the self, considers some people to be his kinsmen and others to be outsiders. Because of this misconception, he suffers. Indeed, the accumulation of such concocted material desires is the cause of suffering. Material ideas is the cause of suffering and so-called happiness in the material world. The conditioned soul is thus situated, must take birth in different species and work in various types of consciousness, thus creating new bodies. This continued material life is called samsara, birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety due to such material considerations. Thus, we sometimes come to a proper understanding and sometimes fall again to the wrong conception. No purport. Why we go through lamentation and foolishness and anxiety? We make so many bad decisions. We keep taking birth again and again. What like does every lifetime have some progress?
No, not necessarily. Some lifetime have regress. Somebody may be very sinful in a lifetime. Somebody may make many mistakes, and therefore they will go down.
And because of the mistakes done in previous life, this lifetime, we sometimes suffer in different areas of life. Maybe relationships, maybe money, maybe whatever, different areas of life.
Of course.
And it's because of sinful activities from the past, right?
Sinful activities,
aparads. But why is it so hard to kind of continue and to not continue whatever devotional life without giving up sense gratification, and to just say, I have done sinful activities, I'm suffering, let me rededicate myself? Why is it so difficult to convince the mind to do that? Even Hiranyakashipu is talking here, but he's not able to do that either. He wants revenge anyway. So talking is one thing. Why is it so hard to put our mind in the path of bhakti and say, I want to progress spiritually?
Because it's a constant choice. It's not a choice you make once. It's like say, okay, I want to become a doctor. You have to study and pass every exam. You cannot just say, oh, I want to become a doctor, then people run with the certificate. No, okay, you have to go and join the college, you have to have qualifications just to join the college, then you have to pass exams, read books and so on. So there's a whole process, just the decision is just the beginning, then there's the whole work.
So one of the ways is to always stay in the association of devotees, right? Then we help.
Of course, because we need to refresh our determination, and the way to refresh determination is to be in touch with people who are determined.
Thank you. Atrapi udarharanti mam itihasam puratanam yamasya preta bandhunam sambadam tam nibodhata. In this regard, an example is given from an old history. This involves a discourse between Yamaraja and his friends of a dead person. Please hear it attentively. The words itihasam puratanam means an old history. The Puranas are not chronologically recorded, but the incidents mentioned in the Puranas are actual histories of bygone ages. Srimad Bhagavatam is the Mahapurana, the essence of all the Puranas. The Mayavadi scholars do not accept the Puranas, but Srila Madhvacharya and all other authorities accept them as authoritative histories of the world. Why the Mayavada scholars don't accept Puranas?
I mean, some Mayavadi scholars, they accept, meaning they use it, but in general, they may speculate, like, the Arya Samaj, they don't accept the Puranas. Those are Mayavadis, they only accept the Vedas. So there are a class of people who don't accept the Puranas.
They accept only Upanishads and Vedas.
Something. For us, the Bhagavatam is the highest pramana, highest source of knowledge. This is explained by Jiva Goswami elaborately at the beginning of the Tattva Sandarbha.
What's the essence?
Huh?
The essence of that?
Pardon?
The essence is that Srimad Bhagavatam is the cream of all the literatures.
Yes, yes. It's the cream of all Vedic literature. Because it's much more clear, it's available, it's available in full, and it's there's a level of explanation, its maturity after full realization. And it's not mixed with material desires. Okay?
Ushi nareshwa bhudraja suyagya iti vishruta saptanay nihato yuddhe Nyatayastam upasata. In the state known as Ushinara, there was a celebrated king named Suyagya. Where the king was killed in the battle by his enemies, his kinsmen sat around a dead body and began to lament the death of their friend. Vishirnaratna kavacham vibrasta bharanashrajam shara nirbhinna hridayam shayam ashrigavilam avilam prakirna kesham dvastaksham rabhasa dashtajachadam raja kunta mukhambojam chintayudha bujambride chinnayudha bujambride Ushinarendram vidhina tata kritam patim mahishya prasimikya dukkita hatasmanateti karayuru brisham nyantyo muhu tatpadayorupapatan. His gold and bejeweled armor smashed, his ornaments and garlands fallen from their places, his hair scattered, and his eyes lustreless. The slain king lay on the battlefield, his entire body smeared with blood, his heart pierced by the arrows of the enemy. When he died, he wanted to show his prowess, and thus he had bitten his lips and his teeth remained in that position. His beautiful lotus-like face was now black and covered with dust from the battlefield. His arms, with his sword and other weapons, were cut and broken. When the queens of the king Ushinara saw their husband lying in that position, they began to cry, "Oh Lord, now that you've been killed, we also have been killed." Repeating these words again and again, they fell down, pounding their breasts at the feet of the dead king. Purport. As stated here, Rabhasa Dashta Dachadam, the dead king, while fighting in anger, bit his lips to show his prowess, but nonetheless he was killed by providence, Vidhina. This proves that we are all controlled by higher authorities. Our personal power or endeavor is not always supreme. We must therefore accept the position offered to us by the order of the supreme person. Actually, this point here, so this point here in this verses 7.2.29-31, this shows that we are all powerless, although we may think we are powerful. So the personalities, there are some personalities who just don't accept authority of God or authority of how destiny and what was it, Vidhina, the destiny here, the providence. When they don't accept, then they act in ways like Hiranyakashipu. He didn't accept the death of Hiranyaksha, so he was going around trying to take revenge and trying to do all kinds of things. It's again like a very kind of narcissistic mentality to think I'm right, everybody else is wrong, and then they find ways to justify their part, and they don't like being controlled by authorities, but they always like to control others. And yeah, and they don't understand this point what Prabhupada is saying here. Our personal power or endeavor is not always supreme. That's what they don't understand, these people. All these people, Daksha, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, etc. Yeah.
The month is of today. What time works for you?
Okay, any questions or comments? Rudatya uchairda daitangri pankajam sinjatya ashraya kucha kunkumarunai vishrasta keshabharana shucham dranam Srijantya akrandanaya vilepire. As the queens loudly cried, the tears glided down their breasts, becoming reddened by kumkum powder, and fell upon the lotus feet of their husband. Their hair became disarrayed, their ornaments fell, and in a way that evoked sympathy from the hearts of others. The queens began lamenting their husband's death. Aho vidhatra karunena na prabho Bhavan pranito dhrig agocharam dasham Ushinaranam asivrittidha pura Krito dhunaye shucham vivardhana. O Lord, you have now been removed by cruel providence to a state beyond our sight. You have previously sustained the livelihood of the inhabitants of Ushinara, and thus they were happy, but your condition is now the cause of their unhappiness. Tvaya kritagnyena vayam mahipate katam vinashyama suhrittamena te tatranuyam tava virapadayo shushrushatinam dishayatrayayasi. O king, O hero, you were a very grateful husband and the most sincere friend of all of us. How shall we exist without you? O hero, wherever you're going, please direct us there so that we may follow in your footsteps and engage again in your service.
You did 33?
Yeah.
You did 33?
Yeah. Yeah. There's no purpose. Let us go along with you. Purport. Formerly, a Kshatriya king was generally the husband of many wives. And after the death of the king, especially in the battlefield, all the queens would agree to accept Sahamarana, dying with the husband who was their life. When Pandu Maharaj, the father of the Pandavas, died, his two wives, namely the mother of Yudhishthir, Bhima, and Arjuna, and the mother of Nakula and Sahadeva, were both ready to die in the fire with their husband. Later, after a compromise was arranged, Kunti stayed alive to care for the little children, and the other wife, Madri, was allowed to die with her husband. This system of Sahamarana continued in India even until the time of British rule, but later it was discouraged since the attitude of wives gradually changed with the advancement of Kali Yuga. Thus, the system of Sahamarana has practically been abolished. Nevertheless, within the past 50 years, I have seen the wife of a medical practitioner voluntarily accept death immediately when her husband died. Both the husband and wife were taken in procession in the mourning cart. Such intense love of a chaste wife for her husband is a special case. I just wanted to bring out the point that the woman was so attached to the husband because he was so good and so qualified and so useful for her purpose of life, that the pain of separation from his death, the pain of not being with him, was greater than the pain of the fire burning her body, and when she would jump into the fire where the husband's body was being burned. So that kind of separation is not really felt, mainly because also the man maybe not really so concerned about the woman's spiritual progress. Maybe the man is more concerned about his own, like he wants the woman to serve him, etc. But this is a Vedic woman, glory of a Vedic woman. Women of India, since time immemorial, have had this power of chastity, that they were so dedicated to their husbands that they could bring a dead person back to life, or they could stop the sun from rising because the husband had a curse that he'll die at sunrise, or bringing, so many stories we have seen, or even the story where there was a woman who took her leper husband on her shoulder and carried him to a prostitute because the man wanted to enjoy with the prostitute, and her dedication to the husband was so great. Now, the question to you is a woman supposed to honor and worship a husband who is very fallen and tolerate his abuse and stay, especially if he's, say, narcissistic and abusive, and if the husband is, okay, I have to record this question because we're, so if the husband is very narcissistic and very abusive, so is the woman supposed to stay chaste and follow everything he says and be so dedicated? This is a very delicate question.
Well, there are different degree of deviation by the husband. The Shastra, the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, in this camp, we'll see later, it says that a woman doesn't have to follow a fallen husband. Actually, you can lead a fallen husband. That's also Chaitanya Charitamrita. So at the same time, it's a very, very crucial decision. You have to see how fallen is the husband, how tolerable is the situation, how fixable is the situation. So first of all, one should try different things. And then if nothing works and the person is really abusive, really violent, and it's intolerable, then of course, in a mature way, one can leave aside from the person. At the same time, Shri Baba said also, should not go into another relation. So both aspects are there.
I think there's also another element of leaving, in the sense of not expecting much from the person, especially if they are of this kind of character, very abusive or very like insulting, putting a person down emotionally, manipulative. Then we at least cut off expectations from the person and understand this person is not going to change. They have a demoniac type of mentality. They may be devotees, but they may have this tendency, and to not put our hopes in their hands.
Yeah, one can detach himself, herself emotionally, so just like you may work under a boss at the office, you may hate the boss, but that's a job you have, and so those for 8 hours, that's your boss. So similarly, a woman may internally detach herself from a very fallen husband And although she may decide not to change anything for the sake of children or because maybe she doesn't really have other alternatives economically or socially, then at the same time she can become just detached. Okay, this due to my karma, I got this nonsense husband, not the helpful, and so on and so forth. But okay, I told her it's.
We want to speak a little louder so they can hear maybe. And another point is also like this can help a person to become more Krishna conscious, more attached to Krishna. Because if the husband is very perfect and always supportive, we may become complacent. But when the husband is not very understanding or in-laws are very heavy and they don't take care of us, then that sense of being neglected makes us more serious about spiritual life. And we say, oh, Krishna loves me. These people are not people who really can love me and care for me. And we become more serious about it, right? That can
It's possible. See, a devotee can take any situation to advance. One can become very grateful if the situation is good. But often people, when they're in a good situation, they forget about God, many people. So yes, a hard situation may be a stimulant to say, okay, that my happiness is not in this world, it's not with this man, it's not in this situation. And they might become more serious. It's not a rule. Some people may go into depression, into lamentation, and forget Krishna that way. But people may, some strong devotee can take that situation as an impulse, as an urge for spiritual life, as a realization. And this world does no happiness.
Also, in this purport, when Prabhupada is speaking about when the women would do the sahamarana, they will jump into the fire. And he says that it's very rare, it's a special case. I was thinking how back then women did not have any support system. They didn't have education. They didn't have anything. They would die without they would die without the husband, literally, because nobody was able to provide for them, etc. But these days, if somebody is a devotee and everything, it's not end of life. If the husband dies, they can continue Krishna consciousness. They can, they can live in the dham and take shelter of the holy dham. And I think there are many other practical reasons why it's not recommended that a person needs to die. It's good to kind of build a sense of self-worth, right? I'm talking about especially women, where there is a culture that says women should always be under the submission of men and she should not think on her own. She should not be independent even after she's 60 or 70. So anyway, that's my point. Okay, any other questions? If you have, please, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat box. Evam vilaptinam vai parigrahyamritam patim anichatinam niraharam arkostam sanyavartata. Yeah, that's right. Yes, Rajeshwari Radhika Mataji saying Bhaktivinoda Thakur did not support this Ratha of Sati rights. Yeah, he actually stopped it. That's true. Why did he stop? I think for the same reasons. Why do you have to end? If the guy goes to hell, you will also go to hell. Better to remain and perform some good activities and go back to God. The time was appropriate for the body to be burned. But the queens, not allowing it to be taken away, continued lamenting for the dead body, which they kept on their laps. In the meantime, the sun completed its movement for setting in the west. Actually, there are many cases in movies and all, they used to lament and cry, but nowadays it's not like that. I know two stories. It's like a real life story of somebody that I know in Mayapur. Devotees. The husband died. One died of cancer, another died of COVID. And I know that both of them are glad because they didn't have good marriage, good relationship. One husband was really abusive. Another husband was so miserly, would not let the wife. She came from like upper middle class and he was very so when the husband died, they didn't cry. They were actually glad. So they're completely opposite situations in Kali Yuga. But it's true, like Prabhu is saying, there is karma. Some people just don't have good husband karma. They may not have very spiritually advanced husbands. They may not have husbands who support for spiritual life. Can be an impetus to become more serious individually. or it can just be a obstacle for us sometimes. So it's also karmic thing. It's not something like because we're devotees, it doesn't mean we will have a happy marriage or something like that. We need to work on it. We need to work on ourselves. The purport. According to the Vedic system, if a person dies during the daytime, it is customary for his funeral ceremony to be performed before the sun sets, regardless of whether he is burnt or buried. And if he dies at night, the funeral must be completed before the next sunrise. Apparently, the queens continued lamenting for the dead body, the lump of matter, and would not allow it to be taken away for burning. This illustrates the strong grip of illusion among foolish people who consider the body the self. Women are generally considered less intelligent. Because of ignorance only, the queens thought of the dead body as their husband, and somehow or other thought that if the body were kept, their husband would remain with them. Such a conception of self is certainly for go-khara, cows and asses. I mean, even cows and asses know when the cow or ass is dead. We have actually seen that sometimes when a cow's calf has died, the milkman cheats the cow by presenting before her the dead body of her calf. Ouch. Thus, the cow, who would not otherwise allow milking, licks the dead body of the calf and allows herself to be milked. Oh, I feel so bad. This substantiates the description of the Shastra that a foolish man in the bodily concept of life is like a cow. Oof. Not only do foolish men and women consider the body the self, but we have even seen that the dead body of the so-called yogi was kept for days by his disciples who thought that their guru was in samadhi. And when the decomposition began and the bad smell unfortunately began to overwhelm the yogic power, the disciples allowed the dead body of the so-called yogi to be burned. Thus, the bodily concept of life is extremely strong among foolish persons who are compared to cows and asses. Nowadays, great scientists are trying to freeze dead bodies so that in future these frozen bodies may again be brought to life. The incident narrated by Hiranyakashipu from history must have taken place millions of years ago, because Hiranyakashipu lived millions of years ago and was even then quoting from history. Whew. Thus, the incident occurred before Hiranyakashipu's lifetime. But the same ignorance in the bodily concept of life is still prevalent, not only among laymen, but even among scientists who think they will be able to revive frozen corpses. Apparently, the queens did not want to deliver the dead body for burning because they were afraid of dying with the dead body of their husband. I think this is the main reason. They didn't want to die, so they didn't want to give the dead body. That makes sense. They didn't want to die. Something I wanted to say about death and resurrection, coming back to life. But by the way, I mean, talking about samadhis, there were people like Raghavendra Swami, Vadiraja Tirtha, who did go live samadhi. They were alive and they went into samadhi. So there are mystical stories as well. Not everybody's body is ordinary. Tatra he preta bandhunam ashrutya paridevitam ahatan balako bhaktva yama swayam upagataha. While the queens were lamenting for the dead body of the king, their loud cries were heard even from the abode of Yamaraj. Assuming the body of a boy, Yamaraj personally approached the relatives of the dead body and advised them as follows. Sometimes the living entity is forced to give up his body and enter another one according to the judgment of Yamaraj. It is difficult, however, for the conditioned soul to enter another body unless the present dead body is annihilated through cremation or some other means. The living being has attachment for the present body and does not want to enter another, and thus in the interim he remains a ghost. If a living being who's already left his body has been pious, Yamaraj, just to give him relief, will give him another body. Since the living being in the body of the king had some attachment to his body, he was hovering as a ghost. And therefore, Yamaraja, as a special consideration, approached the lamenting relatives to instruct them personally. Yamaraja approached them as a child because a child is not restricted but is granted admittance anywhere, even to the palace of a king. Besides this, the child was speaking philosophy. People are very much interested in hearing philosophy when it is spoken by a child.
Yeah, this we see also as its preaching strategy, that sometimes Sunday program, if you get the children to speak the philosophy, that's very, very attractive. People have less resistance to hear from a child, so it can be a very effective tactic. Of course, if you have qualified children.
This is an interactive session, so you are welcome to raise your hand and ask a question or be part of this discussion. Is an opportunity for you to ask whatever doubts you may have or whatever curiosity you may hold about these concepts. These are very important basic philosophy concepts. Or if you don't understand something or you want it to be repeated. Shri Yama Uvacha Aho Amisham Vayasadhikanam Vipasyatam Lokavidhinam Vimoha Yatra Gatas Tatra Gatam Manushyam Swayam Sadharma Api Shochanti Apartam Shochantapartam. Sri Yamaraj said, alas, how amazing it is. These persons who are older than me have full experience that hundreds and thousands of living entities have taken birth and died. Thus, they should understand that they also are apt to die. Yet, still they're bewildered. The conditioned soul comes from an unknown place and returns after death to the same unknown place. There's no exception to this rule, which is conducted by material nature. Knowing this, why do they uselessly lament? The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 2:28, Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyaktani dhana yeva tatra ka paridevana. All created beings are manifest in the beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when they are annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Accepting that there are two classes of philosophers. One, believing in the existence of the soul, and the other, not believing in its existence, there is no cause of lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by following the Vedic system. Yet, even if for argument's sake, we accept the atheistic theory, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before creation. From the subtle state of unmanifestation comes manifestation, just as from either air is generated, and from air, fire is generated. From fire, water is generated, and from water, earth becomes manifest. From the earth, many varieties of manifestations take place. For example, a big skyscraper is manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation remains. But in the course, the law of conservation of energy remains. But in the course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. Then what cause is there for lamentation in either manifestation or unmanifestation? Somehow or other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost, both at the beginning and at the end. All elements remain unmanifested, and this does not make any real material difference. But what's the difference between this and Mayavada philosophy of everything is one, is no? Like there is this philosophy of Mayavada, everything is just manifest, unmanifest is all the same. There is no difference. Everything is one. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mityam. This world is untrue. What's the difference between that philosophy and this?
See, here Sri Prabhupada is saying, even if one accepts that there is no soul, the material elements are there anyway, so what is there to lament? it's hypothetically, even if we accept that there's no soul, why lament? That's the point here.
Okay, so okay, good, clear. If we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Antavatam ime deha, Antavanta ime deha, that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, Nitya Shokta Sharirina, but that the soul is eternal, and that we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament the changing of a dress? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king, but when we wake up, we can see that we're neither in the sky nor seated on a chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for loss of the body. In the Mahabharata, it is said, Adarshanad iha yata punas chadarshanam gatha. This statement could support the theory of the atheistic scientist that the child in the womb of a mother has no life but is simply a lump of matter. To follow this theory, if the lump of matter is aborted by a surgical operation, no life is killed. The body of a child is like a tumor, and if a tumor is opened upon and thrown away, no sin is involved. The same argument could be put forward in regard to the king and the queens. The body of the king was manifested from an unmanifested source, and again it became unmanifested from manifestation. Since the manifestation exists only in the middle between the 2 points of unmanifestation, why should one cry for the body manifested in the interim? Aho vayam dhanyata atra tyaktaha pitrubhyam na vichintayamana abhyakshamana abhala vrikadibhi sarakshita rakshitayo hi garbe. Can I also read it if you like?
It is wonderful that these elderly women do not have a higher sense of life than we do. Indeed, we are most fortunate, for although we are children, they have left to struggle in material life, unprotected by father and mother. Although we are very weak, we have not been vanquished or eaten by ferocious animals. Thus, we have a firm belief that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was given us protection even in the womb of the mother to protect us everywhere. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshu janatishti. Lord is present in the core of everyone's heart. Thus the Lord gives protection to everyone and gives the different the living entities wants to enjoy. Everything is done by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, one should not lament the birth and death of a living being, which have been arranged by the Supreme Lord. For Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham radhisa nivishto mathasmritir gyanam aponam cha. I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. One must act according to the direction of the Lord within the heart. But because the conditioned soul wants to act independently, the Lord gives him the facility to act and experience the reactions. The Lord says, Sarva dharmam parityaja, mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all other duties and simply surrender unto me. One who does not abide by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is given the facility to enjoy this material world. Instead of restricting him, the Lord gives the conditioned soul the opportunity to enjoy, so that by mature experience with many, many births, he will understand that surrender to the lotus feet of Vasudeva is the only duty of all living beings. Well, here, I mean, Yamaraja is saying, I don't have father, I don't have mother, but somehow, although I'm weak as a child, I'm protected, I'm still alive, So I have a faith in God that whatever is my karma, God will provide that. Just like he says, just like it give us protection in the womb of the mother, God can protect anywhere. At the same time, if it's not one's karma, one will not be protected anywhere.
So that philosophy applies in every aspect of our life, right?
Mhm.
Property, like for example, if we're supposed to have good relationships, karma, or we don't have good relationship karma, we have good money karma, we don't have good money karma. Whatever we try, it's going to be that way, right? Some prarabdha karma things.
No, I mean, if you have zero money, you have the right to try to have more money. Obviously, it may not happen. It doesn't mean that. So if you don't have a job, you cannot just say, "Well, this is my karma. I shouldn't look for a job."
Well, my mind is very tired, and I don't like chanting, so I don't want to chant.
But then you don't take any shit.
No, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. Like we could use excuses, like. We can
Well-
say that, oh, my mind is agitated. Oh, I'm not good with making money. I'm not good with relation. We can use it as an excuse, right?
What we can have some excuse.
That we have these challenges.
Some,
Yeah, Kalpana is saying, Kalpana, you want to unmute and say it?
why don't we read it?
You want to?
If you put the time to write it, let's read it.
I have seen my mother who's suffering from relationship and money since the day of marriage. And every day she's tolerating since 26 years, but still not able to follow bhakti because she doesn't know anything about body and soul, not about rebirth. Why there's no equal chance for bhakti in everyone's life? And also I feel that we can do bhakti after I'm having space to live, food, money, then only it's possible to think about bhakti.
Okay, listen, I don't know this Kalpana lady, you know her?
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know the mother, but you're saying two things which appear to me contradictory. Maybe if you want to explain, can you put back? Can you put back the chat?
Oh.
So you're saying that after having space like food and money, I can do bhakti, but you're not saying that your mother died of starvation. She's still alive and she still has enough money to keep the body and soul together. So I'm not sure what kind of degree of bodily comfort are you talking about? What's needed for bhakti? Sometimes the opposite. People have so much money and they don't care about bhakti because they care about bhukti. They care about enjoying life. So your mother, I don't know her, so it's not a personal comment, but she has enough money and food to be alive. So what's the problem accepting bhakti? Plus you're saying that why not
there's no
everybody,
equal chance for
yeah,
bhakti
but I'm sure you are a devotee and you gave a chance to your mother. You must have given books, you must have invited her to the temple, you must have invited her to chant. So how can we say that your mother didn't have a chance for bhakti? I mean, did you ever give her a book or invited her to the temple, told about Krishna? So millions of people have chance of bhakti, but they don't take it up. They say they don't have time. I don't know your mother, I repeat, it's not a personal comment.
I think the mother is wounded type of character person.
But besides, I'm just saying as a principle, many people have a chance and they don't take the chance. They just think they have more important things to do, or they're just inimical to God, or they're so mentally disturbed that they cannot, they're not willing to fix the mind in something higher.
They don't have enough sukriti, they don't have enough.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a diamond, Bhakti yoga is a diamond. Not everybody can afford it. Well, so you need to, I'm just saying that it's only possible by the mercy of the causeless mercy of Guru and Krishna that we came to Krishna consciousness. I'm just saying that it's not only willpower. Sometimes we're just not ready, but don't think that she's not progressing because everything you're doing is going to benefit her. And I think she's a wounded soul, wounded soldier She's gone through a lot of abuse and a lot of pain in her life. So she suffered a lot, and that suffering has covered her to be able to practice the kind of bhakti yoga that you think should be done. But Krishna sees it differently. Krishna sees what she's doing in her mind, in her heart, according to her capacity. Like an ant, what it can do and what an elephant can do. For Krishna, it's not the quantity of the task, but it's the quality depending on our capacity. So all I will say is be kind to your mother, be compassionate, be forgiving, try to like pray for her, chant for her. Because when other people are not able to do it, when we do it for them, they will advance. They'll come at one point or another. You are the daughter. Because of you, she'll come. So you practice Krishna consciousness earnestly. You practice with full dedication, and that she will also get the benefit. And we can all.
The point is that different people have different nature. Some people take material problems as an impulse for spiritual life, and some people take material problems as an impulse for depression, tamas guna, lamentation, just absorption and complaining about everybody. Again, I don't know the mother, so these are general considerations. But everybody has got some free time, and they choose what to do with their free time. If they are devotionally inclined, they pray to God, they go to temples, they read the spiritual books. And I'm talking in general. It could be the Bible, the Quran, the Gita, but they take shelter in spiritual activities. And if they're not devotionally inclined, then they take shelter in whatever they want to take shelter in something material. There's something to chat.
How will you explain this is Rajeshwari Kamataji. How will you explain the abuse of devotee children at the hands of those who are supposed to protect them? One boy told his ordeal. He was abused sexually by the teacher. He told this to his mother, who told him to chant Nasima prayers next time. The abuser came next time. He chanted. The teacher abused and left. It kept happening till this boy was out of the Gurukul.
So what's the question? How do you explain?
Yamaraja's words are difficult to understand. How will you explain the abuse of devotee children at the hands of those who are supposed to protect them?
You see, there are two different patterns, okay, two different paths. One is to work so that these things don't happen. In other words, you create safe environments, you screen teachers, you have supervision, you have child protection teams, you have child protection training for children. Okay, we are talking very delicate thing. If this thing keeps ringing, it's very distracting. So one thing is our duty as a society, as the elders of society, as the responsible people of the society, to do our best. At the same time, people carry their own karma. I mean, do you think that these people, like this teacher who abuses children, will not be abused in the next life? So there is a very fine line. One extreme is to say, well, just karma. You know, they must have done something because some child, like Yamaraja is saying, I'm weak, I'm protected, but nothing is happening to me. He could have been sold into slavery, he could have been abused, he could be killed, okay? So there's a fine line between saying, oh, is that karma? And so there is no problem, in one sense, and taking responsibility for our organization of our society, child protection, and so on. So one should do this not in Tamaguna, not in Rajaguna, not hopefully in Sattvaguna. But at the same time, how do you explain? How do you explain that people have their baggage? And some child, the same child in the same Gurukula, I mean, two children in the same Gurukula, one gets abused, one doesn't get abused. Why? What is the explanation? That's my question to you. So we need to understand that people have a baggage, and the baggage manifests in this life. So we should do as much as possible to prevent these things, but You can't just erase people's karma by organizational development.
Wow. But the organization or the management who does nothing knowing it is also responsible.
Of course, when you put together, see, there are 5 types of individuals that are deserving protection in a civilized environment. Brahmanas, women, cows, the elderly, and the sick, and the children. Okay? So a civilized society does its best to protect these five persons. But sometimes they individually, they may not have the karma for the protection. Like so many women are taken and sold into slavery, like sex workers all over the world. There are millions of these cases, or they're exploited, being paid very, very, very little and working very hard. So society should organize itself. At the same time, if people have, or cows, even cows. Cows is a pious animal, but some cows are not pious at all. They are born in very sinful environment, and they get killed, and they get tortured, and that's their karma. So now, whatever we have under control, if we have some cows under control, we should protect them. If we have women, we need to protect them. Mothers, daughters, and so on, wives. If we have children, we need to do the best to protect them. At the same time, people carry their own baggage.
Yeah, in my experience also, I've seen like some people may come for astrology readings, or some people come for help. And I have seen that, some things they just have they're in a messy situation, really like sad. But you can see that their tendency, pattern, karma, they're really complicated. And anything you try to go and help them, it actually is going to backfire. And because they have just a tendency to be very violent or very crazy. There's one person I was trying to help, and this person had like 3 different children from 3 different men. And anybody who would try to help her, she would just act very, very crazy. And the only thing I could do at that point was to chant for this person, to pray for that person. So sometimes, it was true that the person who was treating her badly, it was true, it was wrong. But because of her problems, it was almost impossible to help that person. You saw Mataji says, Rajeshwari Mataji says, I mean, taking the words of Yamaraja literally can be disastrous if applied without time, place, and circumstance.
What words?
I don't know which one she's meaning to say. I think she means to say,
I don't know what she means. So
some particular purport. And then she also says this answer about the karma. This answer makes sense, though very difficult to digest for the one who went through.
Yeah, because it's
especially
difficult.
Child.
Because of course, I mean, it's traumatizing, and the experience is traumatizing, and we should try to help everybody as much as possible. But ultimately, freedom comes through the taking responsibility. Ultimately, this is the philosophy. This is reality. Nothing happens. There is no leaf who moves without the will of the Lord. So we need to embrace this philosophy. Otherwise, we are like the wives of Suyajna. Oh, you were alive. You were giving us protection. Now you're dead. Da 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 da. All sentiments, all emotions. So at one point, the people in this life or next life, in 1 year, in 10 years, in 20 years, through therapy, through whatever, they need to take responsibility. Which does not mean that the society doesn't have responsibility. Sometimes the responsibility is of both. Like a husband who abuses the wife obviously has the responsibility. He's an adult, is abusing the wife, and so that is fully responsible. But at the same time, it's not by chance that the wife has a loving, protective husband, and the wife has an abusive and nasty husband. It's not by chance. So unless we accept responsibility for what happens to us, and we not only that, and we take this as mercy, then now we're floating in the mental platform. We're just floating in the mental platform. So we can certainly feel compassion for all the souls who are suffering, abused children, abused women, abused cows, abused elders, or neglected elders. There are so many neglected widows and so on. We can feel compassion. We can try to do something. At the same time, we need to understand nothing happens by chance. It's not by chance that the widow, the day she becomes widow, she's thrown out of the house. And the widow instead is very well protected by the children in a loving environment. Everybody respects her. Everybody gives her space, a room, her food. It's not by chance. Now, because it's Kali Yuga, these anomalies are more and more and more and more because people accumulate so much more karma. Abusers will be born and they will be abused. So.
Yeah, on a philosophical, I think there are different levels of understanding. Philosophical level of understanding, and then there's a social level of understanding, and then there's an individual level of relational understanding. We don't tell a person who's suffering or some child who went through abuse, we don't say it was your karma. Obviously, we don't deal with that on the personal level. I mean, we need to like counsel the kid and take that through the therapy or something, have some aid. Also on a social level, we don't say, hey, it's your karma. But on a deep philosophical level, we understand it.
Yeah, also because, see, you can see that some children become, they have been abused and they themselves become abusers. And some children, they have been abused, they start working for protecting others from abuse or helping people who are being abused. So again, it's the same experience, but some people become themselves perpetrators. Somehow their experience brings them, or their karma, we could say, or their mentality, their psychic body, their guna and karma, we could say, brings them to become, or their choice, we could say, bring them to become abusers. And some others, the same experience, same abuse, but they become benefactors. They start trying to protect people, help people, offering therapy, offering protection, offering assistance.
That's the free will part, right? How we deal with our karma. And then Krishna consciousness is completely separate from these things. We may be traumatized, we may have had dysfunctional families, but us taking shelter of Krishna is not connected to this. Sometimes you say, how can this happen to devotees? I mean, recently in Mayapur, there was a kid who got into this accident on a motorbike. And for months and months, she's still not healed. Her body got burnt and everything. And I wondered, like, she's been a devotee since birth. How could this happen to a devotee? And Prabhu explained similar concepts, and it was so hard for me to understand it, to make peace with it, actually. Means everyone has to take charge of his karma.
Yeah, one has to realize that whatever I'm in whatever situation I am, there is some roots. Nothing happens by chance. We don't live in a godless world or a world governed by chance. That's atheism. And not only that, the Bhagavad is very clear. One should feel that whatever happened to me is only a portion of what could have happened. And Krishna protected me, and somehow, I just paid a little bit, and I need to be grateful. That's Bhagavatam philosophy. The Bhagavatam is for independently thoughtful people. If we become sentimental, emotional, and start pointing fingers. But I said, and I repeat because this is very important, there are different levels of action. One is the philosophical understanding. It's like a diagnosis, like say a doctor. He sees, okay, maybe your foot is rotten, and then the doctor will understand. Look, you had this little infection. You didn't do anything, and now you have to amputate the foot. It's your fault, because you could have acted months ago, but you left this thing happen, infection going. So it's your fault. At the same time, the doctor also tries best, tries to save the foot. Or if he really had to amputate, he has to do it in a more humane way, the most compassionate way, the most harmless or painless way. So both things are there. One does not negate the other.
It's not mutually exclusive.
But we cannot just think that things happen by chance. One kid gets abused, one kid that has a beautiful experience in Gurukul,
One lady
just by chance. One lady has a good marriage, one lady has a terrible marriage, one lady has a beautiful kid, a lady has a kid which is retarded from birth. So otherwise we become atheistic, just atheistic. We don't believe in God anymore.
Wow. Hard truths to digest.
It's a sense of responsibility. It's a sense of responsibility. One needs to see there's a sense of responsibility. One feels, oh, everything good is mercy of God, and everything bad, it's my actions mitigated by the mercy of God. That's our philosophy. That's what the Bhagavatam teaches. There's nothing else. Otherwise, why? There are certain things that the preacher may experience because of his mission. Like, for instance, Srila Prabhupada goes to cold place like Japan or America, and he suffers. That's not his karma. That's because there's a common karma, there's a collective karma, and the preacher accepts that for his mission. But that's different. Here we're not talking about that type of stuff. Isn't that chat?
Yeah, that's a good point. I like the doctor analogy you gave, and I also like this one. Thank you, Lord Prabhu.
Is there any practical remedy to this? Remedy to what?
I think it means the situation when people are abused and
Is that the
I don't know. Mataji, would you like to speak up and say what you meant by practical remedy for something? We have 5 minutes.
Yeah, like the child is suffering, and is there any remedy, like, how he can understand that, okay, this thing happened, it's just because of my karma, that's the thing. But every time, like in mental state, like how can we tell ourselves or like to them that how to come out this situation?
You mean if you are the abused child?
Or you have somebody to deal with?
No, it's different. Are you saying if you're the abused children, or if you're the abused child, or if you see abused children?
Like abused children, like those who are suffering, like if we go and tell them it is just because of your karma. So now, like the boy, okay, they already is a miserable in the condition. So like how they can mentally understand this thing, okay, this thing happened to me is just because of my karma, but how can I improve myself to not get this kind of, that suffering, whatever they are going through.
Okay, so you're asking how to help somebody who was being abused. That's what your question is?
Yeah.
Well, there are professionals. Obviously, one is to, just like physical doctors, they need to be qualified. They can just start surgery or giving pills like that. So similarly, there are psychotherapists who deal with these things, who know how to deal. Obviously, I didn't say you should just impose your karma. No, but there are professional and established procedures. Now there are, you listen to the person and so many other things. But you need to be a professional. You cannot just invent. It's just like you're not can go and if you're not a doctor, you cannot go do and perform surgery to people. So similarly, there are people who are trained in counseling, trained in therapy, trained in recovery of people who have been abused in different ways. And that's their job.
Yeah, when we have a broken bone, we go to a, what do you call them? What do you call them?
Yeah.
So when we have a mind which is broken, we need to go to some professionals. There's no,
So depending on how much you see your role, in other words, everybody has got different duties. Is it your role to help these people? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We are all limited. We're not controllers. Otherwise, we fall into another trap, the thinking we are controlling the whole world. Like these ladies were saying, oh, because of you, Suyajna, the whole kingdom was happy, and now the whole kingdom is unhappy. So we shouldn't think we are the supreme controllers. So we need to first see, what is my dharma? maybe your dharma is to help these people who have been abused, or maybe it's not. That you have to figure out through prayer, through your spiritual guidance, through your inclinations, through your qualifications.
Thank you so much.
Okay, time is up then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. See you today evening. Kalpana, I hope you can join our evening meetings. Hare Krishna.